Hello everyone! We are back today to talk about Oregon wheat again. The last time I saw you, we learned all about how wheat is planted and harvested. We also learned about wheat's life cycle and some of the history of wheat growing in Oregon. Today, I want to pick up where we left off and learn about what happens to wheat after it is harvested. We are going to be meeting with Baker Dave from Slow Rise Bakehouse here in Forest Grove to learn about what it takes to turn these kernels into delicious bread. Okay, let's go over the agenda for today. We are going to start by learning a bit more about Baker Dave and the work he does at Slow Rise Bakehouse. We will then join Dave in the kitchen as he walks us through how to make these delicious biscuits using Red Fife wheat, the same wheat that you grew at home. After we bake with Dave, I will show you how to make bread in a bag. Both of these recipes are included in your wheat kit. Your wheat kit also includes local Red Fife wheat flour, an all-purpose white flour, salt, sugar, yeast, oil, and a loaf pan. All of the ingredients for bread in the bag except for warm water will be included in your wheat kit. If you would like to use your flour to make the biscuits that Dave is making, you will just need a few extra ingredients that are not included in your kit. Make a plan with a grown-up to decide which recipe you will be using. And don't worry too much about figuring this out now. I'm going to talk more about your kit at the end of the video, but first let's learn more about Slow Rise Bakehouse and Baker Dave. Located in downtown Forest Grove, Slow Rise Bakehouse was started by Meredith and Dave back in 2016. All of the flour that they use is grown locally here in the Pacific Northwest, and some as close as 2 miles away. Now, let's hear more about the bakery from Dave. What inspired you to open Slow Rise Bakehouse in 2016?
I opened Slow Rise because I loved making bread at home, and I got a job working in a few different bakeries in Indiana, where I'm originally from. And I loved working as a baker, but I knew I always wanted to have my own place to make the bread that I wanted to make. So that's why I decided to open my own bakery.
What do you enjoy most about the work that you do?
I think what I enjoy most is the moment in the morning when the bread comes out of the oven. Because the way I make bread, it's a really long process. It takes about 2 to 3 days. So when the bread comes out of the oven, it is such a great moment when I know that all the work I did over the last 2 days went well. And there's a real satisfaction in making something delicious and beautiful and nutritious.
Why is using local grain important to you?
I love using local grain for a few reasons. One reason is we can get the grain really fresh. I also love using local grain because I like to have a relationship with the people who grow my food. Just like people like to come to the bakery and see our faces and know those are the people making our bread. For us, it's great to see the farmers and know these are the people growing the wheat. It's a great way to have a really lovely community, because everyone has to eat, and it's a good way to take care of one another.
Now let's join Dave back in the kitchen to learn how he makes the bakery's delicious Red Fife wheat biscuits. Before any baking can be done, the wheat must be milled. Slow Rise uses a stone mill like this to grind grains into flour. Now that we have the flour, let's see what other ingredients go into making this recipe so tasty.
Hi, I'm Dave. Today we're going to make some biscuits using the Red Fife wheat that Lyle's B Sharp grew for us out at his lovely farm. So I'll show you our ingredients first. We have Red Fife flour. We have a little bit of all-purpose flour. We have butter. We have baking powder and baking soda. little bit of salt, and some cold buttermilk. So the first thing I will do is get myself a large bowl. Everything except the butter and the buttermilk will go into the bowl. And I'll mix it all up to make sure it gets evenly combined. And I'll set that aside for a moment. Next, I'll take my butter and I'll cut it into small cubes, carefully. So I'll take my cut up butter and drop it in the bowl with the dry ingredients and toss it around so all the little pieces of butter get coated with flour. Now the next step is called cutting the butter in. And the goal here is to break up the butter into small pieces so we have a lot of really small pieces of butter coated with the flour. Go to each piece of butter and I'm cutting across them. Sometimes you can also take a piece of butter between your fingers and squeeze it like this until the largest pieces of butter are about this big, about a little bigger than the size of a pea. So the next step is to mix in the cold buttermilk. And then I just mix it up with my hands until everything is hydrated. And the next thing we'll do is take a little bit of extra flour, sprinkle it on the table, turn out our dough onto the floured surface. I'll sprinkle a little bit more flour over the top. And then using my rolling pin, I will gently roll out my dough until it's thin. So let's say a little thinner than my finger. Now what I'm going to do is fold the dough onto itself. And now you can see the dough is sort of square shaped. So now that I've folded it, I'm going to gently roll it out again, but not as thin this time. That looks like about an inch thick to me, maybe a little thinner. Now we're ready to cut out the biscuits into individual pieces. You could take a biscuit cutter or any other circular thing like a cup, cut out round biscuits. If you want, you can make square biscuits. It's a little bit faster, and that's what we do here in the shop. Now that you've cut your individual biscuits, whether you made them round or square, it's time to bake them. We will line them up on a little baking sheet, but when you're ready to bake, take a little bit of milk and brush it on top, and then put it into a 375-degree oven for 15 to 25 minutes until the tops of the biscuits get nice and golden brown.
Now I want to show you another recipe you can make with your wheat kit. This one is called bread in a bag. It's called bread in a bag because you are going to do all of your mixing in a bag. First, take all of your ingredients out of the bag, take half of your flour and salt mixture, and pour it into the empty bag. Then add your packet of yeast and sugar. The sugar is going to be food for your yeast. Zip up your bag tight and shake it to mix. After it is well combined, add a half a cup of warm water. Make sure the water isn't too hot or it will kill your yeast. Zip up your bag again and mix it all until you can't see any flour. Put this aside for 10 minutes. While you're waiting, sprinkle a little bit of flour onto your work surface. You can also use a clean finger to dip into your oil and grease your loaf pan. After the 10 minutes is up, you should notice small bubbles forming in your flour-water mixture. This means your yeast is hard at work. Take the rest of your flour and dump it into the bag. Add your oil as well and zip it up tight. Begin squishing and kneading it again until all the flour is mixed in. You can then dump your dough out onto a floured surface and knead it some more. After a few minutes of kneading, shape your dough into a small loaf and place it in your loaf pan. Cover your loaf with a towel or your plastic bag and let it rise for 1 hour. After an hour is up, it's ready to bake. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and bake your loaf for 30 to 35 minutes or until the top is golden brown. And that's all for today, friends! Big shout out to Dave from Slow Rise Bakery and Charlene from Nana Cardoon for donating all of the flour for this project. See you next time!